friends. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Caldwell, and I'm so happy you're here. Each episode, I take some time to chat with fellow artists about life, faith, and the impact of the arts. Hi, friends. You're listening to episode 89. I'm so honored and excited to have one of my mentors, Cynthia Newland, back on the podcast today. Cynthia first came on the show back in July of 2020 on episode 6, and today we dive deeper into some of the topics that we just touch on in that conversation. Cynthia is a dance artist, choreographer, and collegiate professor. She is also a certified life coach and wellness consultant, as well as a licensed health minister. We have a great conversation today about identity, belonging, balancing life and art and work, and the idea of fulfilling our calling throughout different seasons of life. I loved getting to hear Cynthia's thoughts in all of these different areas, and I'm excited that you're going to get to join in on this conversation with us. Whether you've been listening since the first episode, are just joining us for the first time today, or somewhere in between, I'm so thankful to have you as part of this community. Before we even started recording this episode, Cynthia and I jumped into some really great conversation. So I decided I just needed to press record so we didn't miss out on any of that good stuff. So you'll notice that we just jump right in. Thank you so much again for listening, and enjoy my conversation with Cynthia Newland. We've been talking for a little bit now, and I feel like there's so much depth already that would be fun to explore, but so excited to have you back on the podcast, Cynthia. Thank you for joining me.
It's always my joy. You are just a ray of beautiful, bright light. And whenever we have a chance to connect, I leave so blessed. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you. And I was looking back, you were episode 6, way back, the very beginning of the podcast journey in July of 2020. And just amazing everything that's happened since then. And then it's also been fun staying connected through that time and getting to, chat with you and hear what's going on in your life and be able to share things happening here. And yeah, do you want to just give us a bit of an update on you and your family and work, everything that's been going on in that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are 3 years later, and I think we have 4 more grandchildren. Wow. We have a lot of pandemic babies in the family. So 6 grandbabies, and most all of them have been born during this time. So
that's beautiful.
That's personally a joy. And everybody lives within 3 miles. So I get to see them all the time. And I'm very thankful for that being feel like it's my first ministry to my husband, family, grandbabies. That is just a delight. I'm very thankful. Things just with my own life and work, definitely continuing to, dive into the scriptures and my own, transformation of how God can keep renewing me every day in different ways. And so I'm again starting, here we are at the, beginning of a new year, reading through the scriptures again in its entirety, and love the vibrancy and the fresh perspective and insight comes, even though when you read it over and over again. So that's something I have a team of folks that I'm doing that with. So it's always great to have that insight and perspective.
Yeah.
And work, I'm still connecting in the collegiate level. So I love that work and very thankful to be able to pour into students and create and choreograph, but also teach some practical educational resources for career development and hopefully just life management, as well as, dance skill.
Exactly.
And then my work as a health minister, life coach, I have opportunities to pour in that way as well. That feeding and fueling, nourishing and nurturing the body and the soul and the spirit, all interwoven, continues to expand and provide resources and education for a variety of populations. So there's never a lack of opportunities to do.
Yeah.
And I just continue in my journey to breathe and keep learning how to be. And so lots of great things.
Yes, so good. I was just thinking I should let everyone know that if they want to go back and listen to episode 6, it's fun to hear more of your story, kind of getting into dance and the arts, and then also getting into more of what you're doing now with, being a health minister, life coach, kind of helping people find wellness holistically, which is so needed, I think, for all of us. So definitely encourage people to go back and listen. And then today it's going to be fun because we'll get to kind of dig deeper into a few different topics that I think are going to really resonate with people. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And I'm thankful for the work that you've been doing through these past few years that, I think it's been especially life-giving to the communities that you're connected to, being able to pour in, kind of those daily truths. And I love you give almost like a daily devotional each morning. And I'm trying to remember which group that's in.
Holy Spirited, Strong and Well.
Yes, Holy Spirited, Strong and Well. And such a great resource that group is. So I appreciate those daily reflections that you bring. And then also having conversations with other artists and people in the faith community and bringing hope and inspiration along this last several years that I think we've been even extra thirsty for that. So thank you for your faithfulness in doing that for us.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, when you have those opportunities and the nudging, and I think that's a part of this journey is just listening and what is it that we are to respond to in that voice. And so, and it's always going to be in every time and every season, right? Things are going to continue to evolve. And so we just need to be open and flexible to be that conduit in that time. So you're very welcome. And it's my honor and my complete joy. And there's a selfishness to it as well in the context of as I am able to utilize the scriptures and, reflect on them, it's something that transforms me. And so maybe it's not too selfish, but in the context of self-development, it also is something that I'm able to put out there for others as well. So that's the way the word is, right? It never is going to just come and be something that you speak out to somebody. It's going to affect you in some way. And so hopefully that's our life in every way. Right. It's not just speaking at you, that it comes through a transformed experience.
Yes. So when you pour out, you're getting poured back into as well. And yes, I love that and grateful for that. So I think it's interesting being in January at the start of the year. There's sort of this opportunity, I guess, that we typically think of January, new year, fresh start, kind of an idea of reflection on the past year and thinking about where are we right now? What are some of the goals and vision, dreams for the new year? What are things, maybe changes we want to make or, things we want to focus on? So I'm excited to have you here this month because I feel like the work that you do is really valuable for us to just take stock of where are we? What is our current state, wellness wise, spiritually, emotionally, all of those areas. And then, how can we move forward and continue to pursue, all that God has for us. So we're going to look at a few different areas today. And first, I think it would be cool to start with the idea of identity. And that's something that I have definitely been seeing as a theme lately in my own life, which is, how God will work like that, where there's themes that come up and you hear it in multiple places. You're like, okay, Lord, I feel like you're you're saying something in this. And just realizing the impact of identity. And a lot of times we're living life not necessarily aware of the identity, maybe even identities, plural, that we view ourselves through a certain lens. And sometimes that can be a good thing, and sometimes that can be detrimental to us. So I'm just curious, how would you define identity? And then maybe we can get into, what that looks like in our lives.
Yeah, beautiful perspective. And I think it's so important to look at that. And as we do think about that identity, it's like, how do we identify ourselves? And it's not just necessarily what are we trying to project out there on our platforms and opportunities that we have to engage. But I do believe it's got to first come through this filter of understanding self. We were talking before about just being known and being seen and being vulnerable and transparent to be able to get into that core place. So when I think about identity, first, it comes from the perspective of God as creator, designer, maker. He has created, design, and made us, and he has named us. He has identified us as his own. And so from that core place of my existence, I identify myself as a child of God, a daughter of the King Most High, as one who has been fearfully and wonderfully made, created, and designed.
Yes.
And so that for me is really very foundational and key. So it doesn't have anything to do with what I do, with what I accomplish. And I am very highly driven to accomplish, but it just sets that aside and just allows me to come into this place of understanding this is who I am. This is whose I am, to whom I belong. And so I think when we can really get to that place of understanding our beauty and our magnificence, the place of worth and value, the place of being known and opening ourselves for being known, that really can set the stage for then helping us to catapult out into the labels that either we want to place on ourselves or that others may place on us, that really helps others to kind of categorize us into society in some way, that oh, you are a teacher, you're an educator, you're a creative, you are ... whatever that might be. That might be how others, might label us. But if we can first get to that core place of this is who I am because of who has made me and created me. And it comes wrapped up in the bow and package of love and acceptance and just that goodness of being made.
Yes. One word that stood out to me as you were talking is the idea of belonging. And I think belonging is something that we're all seeking, in the groups that we're a part of or our family, friendships, things like that. And so, yeah, any thoughts on belonging and sort of why you think we were built with that longing within us?
Yeah. Well, I know that, when we look at the scriptures, we are to love the Lord God with all of ourselves, our heart, soul, mind, strength, love others as you love yourself, right? So there's that sense of love. There's that sense of I am to love God, so I belong to God. God belongs to me. Do this to others. I belong to others. Others belong to me.
Yeah.
And can I honor those relationships as I really look at myself and honor myself? So I believe it's just an outpouring of the understanding of identity, that we were not placed on this planet. God could have created the mass of this earth in little segments of, billions of islands that we could have just lived on our own islands, but that's not how he made the earth.
It's a great image. Yes.
Has, put us on the earth and planet to be able to connect and to belong to one another and to, cohabitate together. And so I believe as we continue to journey through this life and our values continue to grow and transform and mature, there's a deepening in understanding that we don't want to do this life alone and that we're better together. And so if we can really get to that place, like when I was first in my leadership position at the university where I was teaching and I had opportunities to hire people, I hired people who were much better than me in their areas of expertise because we were going to be better together. So it was no competition. It was the better implementation for a program. So if we can realize that we're going to be better together when we connect with other people, that helps that understanding of belonging together, collaborating together, serving together, being known, having that tangible eyes, hands, feet, eyes of us being the representation of God. And if I can be connected to somebody else, then I'm able to understand that this is like the image of God that is speaking to me, that's sharing life with me, that's uttering truth to me, that helps that sense of that, longing to belong.
Yes, that we are receiving from God through one another as well is really powerful. And we were talking a little bit before we started about just mental health and that coming out of the pandemic, and there's, it was already a big struggle, I think, for many people, for many of us, but especially coming out of the pandemic, there's maybe even more sense of this has grown to a really large issue, I guess, in our day. And so I think that's pretty powerful, that idea that you're talking about with belonging, with being known, and finding healing and coming through some of these struggles. And how have you seen that play out maybe in your life or when you're working with people as sort of a life coach mentor?
Yeah, it was a great question, and definitely a good understanding perspective that it was in existence. And I heard a speaker, and this was pre-pandemic, talking about mental health. And he went through the scriptures and noted that there were people in the scriptures that had mental health concerns. So mental health isn't something that has become complicated and prevalent in our life just in the last 50 years. It's been in existence, but it's been exponentially heightened through these last 50 years. And now, because of the situations and circumstances, and a part of it, our devices, right? We're more connected to our devices than we are with humanity. Toxins that we're putting into our bodies, the disassociation with people, and sense of selfishness that causes us to really focus a lot on our self-sufficiency. So a lot of that is anti-belonging.
Right.
So we have been told basically in society during this pandemic, you don't belong out there with other people, isolate. And so that's contrary to belonging, right? And so we found other ways to make these connections. And sometimes it is virtually, and there's been a lot of beautiful things that have come just because of technology, where we don't have to feel so isolated, and we've been able to connect in worship gatherings and other kinds of meetings and conferences virtually. But it's very different than that person-to-person connection. So all of that has had effects on our mental, emotional health. And I have definitely seen it in the last 20 years, in particular in the collegiate age, but beyond as well. And in our youth, younger children as well, that we're just more frail, right? We're more fragile. We don't have the same type of constitution that we used to have. And a part of that, I believe, has needed to go away in the context of the dance world and the arts, where it's basically suck it up, keep moving on. And you're not a person, you're a number, or you're a figure on the stage, and just keep pushing. And so that doesn't serve anybody well. And we've seen a lot of transformation happen in that perspective.
Yeah, grateful for that, for sure. Yeah. I talked to Rebecca Spencer super recently, and we were talking about that idea of it's shifted a lot, which is good, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on maybe the flip side of that as well.
Yeah. So it has shifted, and it's good because it's more healthy, the environment. And also, I think it's just like most anything, when there are different fads that rise or trends, sometimes those trends are rooted from an intrinsic need to have transformation come forth. I think sometimes on the opposite side of this, and we can easily throw in the towel, or easily give up, or easily say that I'm too overwhelmed and I can't do this, where there might be a bit more of our constitution, or definitely more of God that can sustain us, that we don't hold on to. So it's this kind of balance of finding that, well, the trends are showing that people have mental health, emotional health concerns. So I'm just going to put myself in that category, but maybe I don't need to be in that category right now because I'm not in that crisis. And I can continue to, move forward, acknowledging my mental, emotional health, my physical health, my spiritual health, acknowledging those things that need to be regenerated and repaired.
Right.
So again, I think that there can be these opposites. So it's just, where are we and what tools can we use to help us to do a scan, right? To do this mental scan, emotional scan. And there's some beautiful tools that exist that help us in a sensible kind of manner to be able to process and realize, wow, I'm really not doing okay. And who do I have that I've established a relationship that I trust, that I can connect with? And so I think that's where it's so important for leaders to really be accessible,
Yeah.
to not shame, right? To come alongside and to help guide people towards healing, but also to, operate in our lane, because we've got some amazing trained professionals that really can help. But it's definitely something that isn't going away anytime soon. Our challenges that we're seeing with mental and emotional health. But I do believe in a God that shows that there's redemption and that we can turn some of these trends around.
Right.
But it's going to take real effort in a lot of different areas of our lives.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to that, because I think it is something that we're all kind of hearing about or experiencing, seeing in loved ones and family members and friends. So I think it's good to, have the conversations and to think about, okay, what are those resources? Who are those people that are around me that I can reach out to? And I think some of that does kind of tie back into identity, actually, with finding our rootedness and our groundedness almost. And, who does God say that we are? And any thoughts on how we can receive from God, God, what do you say about me? And then also living in that identity that he gives us, rather than maybe those voices from the outside or things that we want to project out to the world. I feel like I'm a little bit wordy here, but
No, it makes sense what you're articulating. And I believe that, again, coming back to the scriptures and looking at the word of God, what does the word of God say? And it clearly articulates that we have been made fearfully and wonderfully created and designed. There's a uniqueness about each one of us, that we are made in love, that God has plans for us, that we are overcomers, we're warriors, we're the light, we're the salt of the earth. We can go through, there's so many scriptures that identify us as individuals that have been made, cared for, loved, designed, that we belong to God. We have purpose, we have meaning. And when we come to those places where we doubt that, where we're coming up against an obstacle that might challenge our core identity, to be able to come back around and say, okay, is that truth, this situation or circumstance, or is it truth that who God says that I am is what I can hold on to and believe? So I believe coming back around to that can help us to have tools to combat the challenges that we may face.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. But I do believe it's important to recognize that just because someone says that I am a follower of Christ doesn't mean that you're never going to have emotional concerns or challenges, or mental concerns or challenges. There's all kinds of things that go on within our chemical, biological makeup that might not fire in our brain. And we need either some type of external helps that will help to bring that healing. So I just want to make that clear, that yes, God is so amazing and powerful and awesome and incredible and a healer. And in any instant, I believe he can heal a ailing body, if it's mentally, emotionally, if it's cancer, if it's some type of need that really, needs some sort of healing or transformation. God can do that in a moment, in an instant. And also, there's times when he does not do that. And it can be our mental health or emotional health. And we need to continue to walk through something to arrive to another place. So I believe God is the core to all that, and identity is very profound, but there can be people who really know without a doubt who they are and still can have some challenges.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And that he's walking with us through it, and then knowing that he's given us those resources as well to be a help along that journey, for sure. So yeah, so good. So kind of shifting gears slightly here, thinking about, as artists coming into this new year and trying to evaluate what's all on our plate and everything. I know we talked about it some actually in our last conversation, kind of the idea of just balance in life, balancing personal things and family with our career or our art and that kind of thing. But I'm curious, how's that for you right now? And any thoughts that you want to share that God's been placing on your heart lately with that idea of balancing life and art?
It's a great question. And I think, as you mentioned, timely as we enter a new year, and think through assessing our last year. What are we hoping will be accomplished through this upcoming year? Mm-hmm. As I was walking this morning, did my 4+ mile walk and praying and talking to God, it was this very topic of me thinking through, okay, Lord, here we are. We're midway through the first month, and what do I have to show for it? You know, right. What I mean? What's happened in these last couple of weeks? And it just put me in that mindset again. I was like, okay, that's about what have I done? What have I accomplished? And I'm just so driven in that way to be able to show results of my work and existence and labor and living. And
right. Yeah. It's hard when you're like, I don't really have anything to show you right now. I'm just here.
Yeah. And I think that was as real as I could be with God, to say that's a part of my bent and brokenness still in my life, that assessment according to what I accomplish, as opposed to my assessment according to who have I just been in relationship with God. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to accomplish things and I'm just going to spend all my time in the context of just sitting somewhere, kneeling or praying and reading my Bible and never leaving my home and never doing, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's not, I don't believe I'm called to that, or that many of us are completely called to that. But it just was really this resounding voice of God this morning as I was walking and talking, and just him quieting me again and saying, okay, here's what we're doing. Be in the now, be present with me now. And that can be challenging for some individuals, some personalities, because it's always this forethinking. And that forethinking is good to plan ahead. But if we're constantly out there in preparation of the next thing, we really can miss what it is in the sweetness of the moment now. So if you're asking, where am I today? I'm looking at this, an academic year and making, plans for up through May. Right. Mm-hmm. And I already have some plans for the summer for other things that are going on. So I have those things on the calendar. However, I don't want to over plan and prepare for every one of those things, because I'm learning in my life to be a little bit more adaptable and flexible.
That's good.
Because that allows opportunities for the Spirit to move. Doesn't mean that I'm not prepared for my lecture course. When I go in to speak, I'm prepared. However, I still want there to be some freedom and openness and flexibility to see my students and hear them. And maybe what PowerPoint I have planned for today will be for another day or two from now. And what needs to happen is the realness of where these people are in my life today. And so I'm just becoming more and more open to that. And it's not that I'm, robotic in my life and I have never really listened to anybody and responded, but I just feel like there's a softening that's continuing to happen. And a part of that's maturation, right? I'm maturing. And a part of it is my love for people is continuing to deepen. And my understanding of being present is becoming more prevalent. So I think that is a good priority.
Yes.
As much as I can articulate it in this time.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of made me think of something you mentioned earlier, of just the idea of listening and listening to God, listening to those promptings that he gives us for what to do next, or how to move, what to say to that person, or to even go and talk to that person, that kind of thing, or to shift your class plans, that kind of thing. I think that's something I've been processing through a lot too, is what does it look like to literally walk with God and be open to what he has in a moment. And in that planner brain, for sure, it can be hard sometimes because we get in the go mode or whatever.
It is. And we've got the model of God, and obviously we can't always completely filter and compare in the context of, Jesus being perfect and doing everything perfect. We know we can aim towards that, but we will fall short. Mm-hmm. But God has an eternal plan So if you think about us and our planning, well, we might plan 70 years, 80 years, 90 years of life, or however long, 100 years, 105, or however long we can think about us breathing and living here on this earth. And so there's something about the comfort of being able to entrust the future plans to the one who has eternity before us.
That's a good perspective.
And so as I put it in that context, it can help me to know that he probably has a pretty good idea about what tomorrow might look like, or a couple of years from now, or a couple of decades from now. And so that just gives me a relief to know that I don't have to get it all right now. Doesn't mean that I'm not doing my part in the journey and being idle. It does give me a lot of freedom and take some pressure off, that as long as I'm attentive in that place of, we were talking earlier, being open, being transparent, being vulnerable, being able to, be seen, to belong, to connect. It sure helps to know that if I'm going to live in that way, I'm going to trust God to be faithful to guide in that way.
Right. Yes. It does take the pressure off, I feel like, of I have to be the one to figure this all out or have the plan totally down to the minute or whatever, and just resting in the fact that he's the one that's really in control and that's directing our steps, and that we can go along for the journey, basically. So finding that balance of, preparation and flexibility in life and everything. So now in where you are in life, being a grandma, or Thea, right?
Yep, that's it. Thea.
I love it. And being, still a mom and wife and teacher and coach, all of these things. How have the different seasons in life kind of impacted your experience as an artist, and I almost wanted to say as a human, but how have the different seasons shifted, I guess, your view of kind of that balance that we are trying to hold in life?
Hopefully I'm becoming a little more fun. Hopefully I'm a little lighter and more open and flexible.
I love that.
About things in life. It doesn't mean that I don't feel the gravity of things around us. I'm connecting with healthcare practitioners in this season of my life. It's where God has me, and we're seeing some pretty devastating results of both the pandemic and isolation and the mental emotional health, the long COVID and what's going on in people's bodies. The controversy that's out there with vaccine, and are those causing some of these premature deaths and illness? You know what I'm saying? Those are deep things, and that is a part of my life and a part of the opportunities that God is affording me to connect with these people and communities. And as well, just prior to hopping on this call, I was down on the floor with two of my grandchildren, and we were playing. Yeah. And all of this can happen within one day. I can be in the education realm with collegiate students and pouring in, teaching, educating, choreographing. There's a creative component. I can be in play mode as Thea, engaging, and I can have engagement with healthcare practitioners. And we're doing some work that has some global implications with the science and the research. So it's more diverse in my life now than it was. Years ago. I was wife and mom, and that was a part of my focus. And I was doing the dance thing. And these other avenues have all opened. And it's not that I feel like I'm just begging God for more by any means. I'm wanting things to be really streamlined. However, God is seeing fit. I believe that I've been faithful in these other areas. And so he's trusting me in my life for more, or for other than what I, in that initial part of our conversation, have identified myself as an artist. Well, he's opening that up to say, well, you might label yourself that. Here's what I'm saying also, that if you will take these opportunities, I'm going to open the doors for you to continue to serve in these other ways. So in this season of life, there's more, I guess, hats to wear than the ones that I wore before. And yet I am choosing to allow God at times to put one off and take another one, and in its place, and put that one off, and not just saying that this is the hat that I'm going to wear and dogmatically keep it, I don't know, just fastened to my head and not be flexible. So in the season of life, there's more opportunities than I've had in the past in diversity of areas, profession, subject matters than just and I don't mean that belittling, just that it's profound, the arts, to be in that arena, but the minister component, all of that continues to deepen and expand.
It seems like God can reveal in us sometimes where we're limiting ourselves, based on, like you said, this is the hat that I wear. And God's like, there's so much more that I have for you. And not that that's not valuable in of itself, but that he's, expanding that capacity or opportunities. So that's very exciting. And it's fun to think about, just as we grow and mature, that we can also find a lightness, more and more lightness, and, hopefully growing more into, relying on God and having less pressure on ourselves and being able to have that fun too, that fun element.
I think that's something I want to continue to, because of my background, upbringing, coming from a divorced home, but, just that abandonment, a lot of that just put me in my early years in this place of self-protection and being very cautious in many ways. And as I've continued to transform and heal and grow and mature, I realized there's some things I missed out on in my life just because I wanted to be protected. And if I was too exposed, then it was possibility of vulnerability and more brokenness or woundedness. And so as we keep growing and maturing, your values prayerfully will grow and mature with you. And what I continue to value is what God says about who I am and where God leads. And if I have labeled myself as a particular way of identifying how I might serve, that sure can limit what doors I'll say, thank you very much, God, for opening that door, but I'm not choosing to go through that one because that's not who I am. And I believe we all can learn, no matter what our walk of life is, whatever our role is, I believe, and I don't use the always and nevers or the shoulds and shouldn'ts because those are shaming.
Right.
However, in this case, I believe we should be open for opportunities to serve that might be out of our own self-label identifying way of navigating in the world. It sure can help us serve humanity beyond restrictions.
Yes. And it's more, I feel like, exciting too. When it's like, God, what do you have next? And just being open to that for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting. And you're so blessed when you do that. And you're a blessing. And you see things from a different vantage point. Right? When you have an opportunity to enter into a different sphere, arena, and your eyes are opened in such a way that you realize, wow, there's a whole lot going on in this community that I wasn't aware of. And it helps me to understand that, God loves them too, right? God is doing a work there too.
Right.
God is very able and desires to interweave his ethos of love in that arena. So always opportunities to grow and transform and learn.
Yes. It's interesting. Some of the similarities probably in our stories. But as far as, coming from a divorced home and the idea of like, I'm going to have my things in a row, and what you're saying about self-protection, I mean, that's very profound. And I think probably most people in some form or fashion, we're self-protecting. I think that's something we come back to a lot. We tend to do as humans. I'm curious, was there a time in your life where you remember having that realization that I am self-protecting?
Definitely when I became a mom.
Yeah.
That was pretty significant in the context of here I have an amazing opportunity to be responsible for this human. And what do I value for this child as I'm being responsible for bringing this little one into the world? What do I want to protect them from? And what's going to just happen and occur in life that is a part of God's path for this child? And as I would filter anything through that mama's heart to teach, to guide, to lead, just to support for my child, I couldn't help but allow it to filter through my own life. And how was I reared in whatever type of way or environment? And how were the things I was desiring for my child? Was I allowing God to come back into my life and do them at a later age, in my late 20s, as I first became a mom? So that was pretty significant time to realize that, wow, I've got some stuff that I got to filter through with here, because it's not fully healthy, right? It's been tainted, and I've lived a part of my life in this self-protected mode. And yes, I want to protect my child and I want to love her well. However, if I feel like I'm solely responsible for that, for this little human's life, it's going to be exhausting and I will fail every single day.
Yeah.
And so if I chose, as I did, to entrust my child into the care of God, God's hand and God's provision and care, then it made me ask the same questions. Have I done that in my own life?
That's so good. So fascinating to think about. And I love how God can use literally anything to speak to us, and how going through that journey of coming into motherhood. And that's really, really profound. I know he's used all sorts of things, movies or music or watching something or conversation, and how he can reveal those areas where we're maybe still, I'm like covering over, but protecting, or we're not entrusting it to him. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing. I'm just curious. So interested to hear your thoughts on one of the things you said you're thinking about a lot lately and interested in is the idea of fulfilling our calling in life. And, what are your thoughts on how can we identify our calling? It's such a big concept. I feel like it can feel like that, at least. So, how can we identify that calling in our lives?
One scripture that comes to mind when I either talk about this topic or reassess again in my own life, it's delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. And at times we interpret that verse as delight yourself in God and he'll give you your desires, right? He'll give you what you want, what you long for, what you hope for. He'll give that to you that you've already kind of conjured up within yourself. I see that verse as being interpreted, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires. He'll name them. He'll write them. He will be the one to author them.
Ooh, that's really good.
And so if we allow God to author those in our life, then that takes, again, pressure off of, gosh, do I have the wrong desires? Do I have the wrong wants? Do I have the wrong inklings? It takes pressure off, because if we choose to trust that God has placed within us desires, then we don't have to feel guilty for wanting things to be happy in our life, or we don't have to, feel guilty that I have a tendency to be a creative and I just would love to have a calling that's being fulfilled in the arts. Well, gosh, maybe that's just way too, just idealistic or way too selfish, because I should probably be a civil servant that is, going and working in this other type of way that's making, practical service, like a nurse that's transforming lives in that way. Well, we will have those kind of dual thoughts in our mind if we haven't resigned to understanding that it's not always a thought of, oh, this is what I want and this is what God wants. Really, we can get to that place of understanding he has written, he's named desires for me.
Yeah.
And so I can trust that those are the things he's leading me towards.
Mm-hmm.
And as we can have that understanding and perspective, I believe it frees us up to know and trust that I don't have to always be this dual pull or contention with, gosh, I think that it would be awesome to have this dream fulfilled that God's, I believe, inspiring me to, but probably I shouldn't do that because it just doesn't feel like that is, I'm not living a martyr lifestyle. Believe me, if you're going to fulfill the calling, you're going to have plenty of days of being a martyr, right? There's going to be plenty of times that you will have a lot of sacrifice and come against, even in the church, what we're teaching, because there's sometimes where the church hasn't really caught up yet with what the artist is and how God has blessed the artist and is using the artist. So I think that calling doesn't have to be so complicated. If we're saying, God, I'm delighting in you. I love you. I adore you. I worship you. I bless you. I exalt you. And from that place, then you keep being faithful to put within me what will bring you joy, what will be used to love others as I love myself, as I'm loving and serving you, and whatever that career or calling and pathway is. So for me, that's the first place of getting to that can help alleviate pressure and to think that we have to just choose something that we probably don't like, right? We're going to have to suffer through this life. I don't believe God wants us to do that. He wants us to delight in him and be able to have this fulfillment of his calling. And it can be fun and it can be joyful and it can be good and it can be satisfying. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have hard times, hard days, challenges along the journey.
Right.
But I don't know that it has to be always this, dissection of, well, this is my life, spiritual life and journey. And then I go to work and begrudgingly do this thing that's going to be my vocation. I don't believe that has to be the case. We can find joy and peace and assurance in that calling.
Yes. And what's really cool about what you're saying with God writing those things on our hearts and he's putting it in us is that it's kind of that continual conversation too, and that it can evolve over time. It can change throughout basically what you were saying about your journey with, I was in this season that was really focused on, motherhood and being a wife and teaching. And then now it's kind of evolved over time based on my circumstances and, where God has me. So it is freeing that it's going to change and it's not like a set it and that's it for the rest of my life, but that it's that conversation and continually going back to God and letting him speak into us, what is that? What do you have for me today? What do you have for me in this season? So,
yes, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day. Tomorrow we get an opportunity. His new mercies come. We rise up and we start it again. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And so with that, this day, are we open to what God has for us this day and not describe or pre-select that what's probably going to be this.
Exactly. Yeah. So good. So I'm curious, is there anything you feel like God has been teaching you lately that you want to share with us?
Really just reiterating that aspect of the moment of being as much and fully present in the moment as you can. And as I'm in this season, I have a couple of friends that have recently lost a spouse and another one who's going through a pretty difficult time in a slow spouse passing in hospice.
Wow.
And as I'm processing through that in this personal way, engagement with people that I know, it helps you to assess and value things in a way of prioritizing what is really important. And I believe when I go into the university and I'm having rehearsals, it's so important what I'm doing and the opportunity to engage with those students and to create and to use the arts in a way to honor God and glorify God, and prayerfully deepen these students in their journey in relationship with God and their worth and value and identity. So important and so valuable. And as I have opportunity to be a part of these grandchildren's lives and to speak truth and to hold them and love them and do that as much as I can unconditionally. And that's so important and so valuable. And as I'm journeying with friends who are in these places of the cycle of life, there's birth and life and death, how sobering that is. So if I can be as present in any one of those conversations or engagement as possible, then I can both be a conduit for the love of God, the hope of God, or just the presence of not even having to do or say or speak, but just be the very hands and again, the eyes, the arms of God in those opportunities. For me, that's becoming more significant in this time of life. And again, it's not that I haven't been there in the past. I just believe as I continue to mature and grow, we look at our life. And I'm on I'll be 60 in February, and I'm on the other side. If God lets me live to be 120, then I'm at the halfway mark. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yes.
But more than likely, I'm now on the other side of how many years I have left to live. And I want to live those well and faithful with a transformed perspective of what really matters, and not be caught up in just looking ahead of what the future is going to be. I am a futuristic person and a planner, and I'm a creative in that way.
Yeah.
But I can't keep that out there as what keeps driving me. What I have to keep is what is God brought to me in the very moment that I'm in. And so that's something that is significant for me in this time of life.
It is very clarifying, I think, when we are faced with the realities of life. And it's interesting how in our culture we tend to not want to see some of those things and we kind of ignore it. But when it's right in front of you, it really is very clarifying. So that's such a good word. And similarly, and it may be the same, so we can just leave it there. Or if you have anything else you'd like to share specifically for artists, do you have anything on your heart that you want to share with artists today?
Yeah, I would say for our artists to continue to realize that if you can tap into the artist of all artists with God. And we just got back from California at the seaside and saw some phenomenal sunsets. And God does that every day. And so God is actively creating every single day.
Yeah.
And if we can, as artists, realize that we're not plugging into, this conduit of something that has been done before, right? It's new every single day, what God has to offer, what God is doing, the work. So that's where we want to tap into. And it will be relevant for our culture today. And so don't despise that opportunity to connect in faithfully in your faith journey with God in prayer and in Bible reading and with community of believers who can continue to support you. And know that if you ask, download what creativity you want me to flourish in, to make, design, for it to come out of me in the creative way that you've allotted for me, then trust that it will be transformative for culture in the world and society today.
Yes. Amen. So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what is one of your favorite things right now?
Oh, goodness. I would have to say the babies.
Yes.
I'm really into these grandchildren.
They're so cute. Yes.
They are cute. And I'm so thankful. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. And the parents, just watching my kids parent these other humans I'm so into that and watching them engage. And I didn't have doubts that they wouldn't do a great job. They're awesome because I've seen them around other small humans in their life
Right.
before. And the other would be my husband, watching him be a grandpa.
Aww.
A good grandpa. So my love well just keeps getting deeper for all of them.
That's
And I'm
so
just
great.
thankful. Yeah, I'm so thankful.
Yes, it is really fun watching. It's fun watching like our, siblings be parents and also friends. And I'm like, wow, just so beautiful to see. And then like gleaning from them wisdom as well. But yes, just really, really fun. And I love that. Yeah, it just gets deeper and deeper. The love well. I like that image.
It does.
So good. Well, this has been so fun to get to reconnect and just dive into a few different topics. And I would love to let people know where they can connect with you and the work that you're doing and potentially, get resources for how to continue living a holistic life and to thrive in life as well. So what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So there's 2 sites. One is Alible3. It's just ALIBLE 3.com. And then the other is a newer site, dancerwellnesscare.com. And both of those have specific ways to connect with me for continuation of coaching, also resources. So I'm just passionate about that holistic approach of living our life. John 10:10, Jesus came to give life and give it in abundance. And so I'm hopeful that we will all continue to live in that fullness and abundance. And it's my joy to be a conduit for that for people.
For sure. And I would encourage if anyone is looking for someone that is that sort of life coach person, Cynthia is amazing just to be able to have conversations and just knowing her heart. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today as well. And just blessings to you as we go into this new year.
Thank you, dear one. I love you dearly. Thank you for this opportunity and for all the work that you're doing. There's so many amazing things that you've got going on, and I'm excited for what God has in store. And yeah, just a joy to call you friend. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too. I'm so grateful for Cynthia and her wisdom and the way that she just points us right back to the truth of God's word. You can find all the links, the full show notes, and additional resources on our website, creativeimpactpodcast.com. On the website menu, you'll see something that says Patreon. And if you're interested in supporting the show by monthly donations and in return receiving bonus content, you can click on Patreon and learn more about how you can support the show. If you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. That way you won't miss an episode. And if you know someone who you think would be encouraged by this podcast, I invite you to share the show with them. Thank you so much for listening to the Creative Impact Podcast. The music for the show was produced by Michael Cash. Until next time, remember that you were designed to create. You were made to inspire. Continue living with purpose and making an impact. See you next time, friends.